Welcome back. Today's story drops you right into the heart of Charlotte, North Carolina, where the sun rose over glinting skyscrapers and the streets pulsed with a rhythm only a city built on ambition could know. Monarch Prestige Motors sat like a gleaming fortress at the edge of Uptown, its mirrored glass walls flashing with morning light. Each luxury car inside positioned like royalty on display. Sleek Ferraris, custom Bentleys, McLarens polished to a blinding sheen. Outside, the air was crisp, scented faintly with gasoline and leather, and the deep purr of high-performance engines echoed like distant thunder. Into this world stepped Nia Carter, her presence quiet but undeniable. She moved with a calm purpose, her hoodie pulled low, sneakers slightly scuffed, eyes scanning the showroom with warmth and curiosity. To an untrained eye, she blended in like any other passerby, just another woman out on errands. But something about her posture, the unshaken confidence behind her gaze, said otherwise. No one inside the dealership noticed. Not yet. The receptionist barely glanced up. The salesmen, sharpened like knives in tailored suits, chatted in low tones, their laughter bouncing off glass and chrome. They didn't know she wasn't just browsing. They didn't know she had a specific purpose. What they did know, what they thought they knew, was how to read people. And Nia, in their eyes, didn't belong. She walked in wanting to buy a gift, one rare, expensive, and utterly meaningful. What she got instead was something else entirely. Smirks, side glances, and an invitation to leave. What happened inside Monarch that morning would spread farther than anyone could predict. Because when the truth rolls in, it doesn't ask permission. It changes everything. And this time, it was arriving in the back seat of a Rolls-Royce. Buckle up, because what started as a quiet walk into a dealership is about to become a thunderclap no one saw coming. Hit that like button, subscribe, and stay with us. This story, it's not just about luxury. It's about who gets to be seen and who refuses to be invisible. Rain had stopped just an hour before, leaving behind a shimmering gloss on the pavement outside Monarch Prestige Motors. Inside, everything was precision, spotless marble floors, chrome railings that curved like sculpture, and a faint scent of citrus cleaner mixed with high-grade leather. The hum of recessed lighting cast a sterile glow on the vehicles, which sat like beasts in a museum, motionless, perfect, untouchable. Nia Carter stepped through the glass doors, her hood down now, revealing deep brown eyes that studied the space like a chessboard. 36 years old and sharper than most would ever guess, she didn't need attention. She needed clarity. For most of her life, Nia had been underestimated. She had built the Carter Wellness Network from a single therapy room into a national force in trauma recovery. But she had done it quietly, far from headlines and red carpets. She preferred it that way. The designer heels, the boardroom flash, none of it mattered. What mattered was people, healing them, serving them, and today honoring one of them. Her twin brother Darren, a former Army Ranger turned motivational speaker after a combat injury took his left leg, was turning 37 next week. For years, he had joked about someday rolling up to his speaking gigs in a car that made people turn their heads before he ever opened his mouth. Nia was here to make that happen, but she knew, the moment the door hissed shut behind her, that she'd walked into a different kind of battlefield. Across the room, men in bespoke suits looked up, barely concealing the once-over glance that clung to her sneakers and faded sweatshirt. One of them, tall, crisp, calculating, nudged a colleague, Cole Whitaker, sales manager. The kind of man who kept a short list of people worth his time and made sure everyone else knew they weren't on it. He didn't approach. Not yet. Instead, he leaned back with an amused smirk, watching her like she was a scene from a slow-moving train wreck. Nia moved slowly, deliberately, eyeing the Range Rover Rain series on its elevated platform. She could already feel it, the condescension rising like fog off the marble, the gatekeeping masquerading as customer service. But she wasn't here to win anyone's approval. She was here with purpose, and no smirk, no suit, no whispered judgment would shift that. Somewhere deep in the showroom's stillness, something began to coil, tension, unspoken and electric. It was the kind of moment just before the first domino falls. The moment Nia pointed to the Range Rover Rain series, The room shifted, almost imperceptibly, like a drop in barometric pressure before a storm. Her voice was calm, measured. "I'm interested in that one." Cole Whitaker, who had been lounging like a king among peasants, straightened just slightly, his amusement sharpening into something colder. He approached now, not with warmth, but with a predator's precision, each step polished, each movement calculated to reinforce who held control in this space. "That model," he said slowly, as if explaining physics to a child, "is the Rain series, limited edition. Only 10 in the country, highly exclusive." His eyes flicked to her sweatshirt, her sneakers, her natural curls pulled into a loose bun. "Most clients schedule private appointments," he added, voice low but edged with condescension. Nia nodded, unfazed. "I'd like to learn more. See the interior." Cole's smile didn't move past his lips. "Of course, but unfortunately the vehicle is already on hold for a returning client." It was a lie, a small one he'd used many times before to deflect time wasters, daydreamers, people who wandered in from the cold to touch things they'd never afford. "Our pre-owned selection might be a better fit," he added smoothly, gesturing vaguely toward a side door. Something behind his eyes dared her to push back. For a flicker of a second, Nia hesitated. Was she being unreasonable? Was she misreading the tone? She glanced around. The showroom was still, too still. Conversations had quieted. Across the room, two other salesmen whispered, barely concealing smirks. Her breath tightened. Maybe she was making this harder than it needed to be. But then Cole's eyes landed on her wristwatch, a gift from her brother, modest but meaningful, and the subtle curl of his lip said everything. He didn't see a serious buyer. He saw an inconvenience. "I'd like to know more about the Rain," she repeated, firmer this time. Cole took a deliberate step closer. "Look," he said quietly, "I get it. These cars are exciting, but they start at $300,000. We don't do joyrides." His voice wasn't cruel. It was worse, casual, dismissive. The kind of tone used to swat a fly, not speak to a person. The front desk receptionist shifted uncomfortably. One young salesman, nervous, maybe 24, hovered nearby, sensing something wasn't right but unsure what to do. Nia's jaw tightened. She wasn't angry yet, but the storm inside her had begun to churn. Outside, the light shifted, casting long shadows across the glass showroom floor. And still, she stood there, unmoving, not backing down. The line had been drawn. The air inside Monarch Prestige Motors had turned dense, like static before a lightning strike. Nia stood her ground, but something had begun to twist inside her. Slow, subtle, like a thread unraveling from the inside out. Cole was no longer pretending to be helpful. His mask had slipped just enough to expose the disdain underneath, but Nia still wasn't entirely sure if she was imagining it. Maybe she had misread the tone. Maybe this was just how luxury sales worked. Exclusive, guarded, cold by default. Yet as she watched Cole pivot on his polished shoes, gliding over to a couple dressed in head-to-toe designer, heels clicking, diamonds winking beneath the lights, her doubt deepened. He greeted them with an entirely different energy, arms extended, a rich, theatrical warmth that hadn't been offered to her. His voice rose, full of performative charm. "Mr. and Mrs. Callahan, what a pleasure. I've reserved the Rain series just for you." Nia blinked. Reserved? The same vehicle she had asked about not 2 minutes ago? The same one he claimed was unavailable? Her gaze tracked him as he led the couple to the platform, unlocking the door of the very car she had inquired about. She took a slow step forward, as if pulled by gravity. Her mouth opened to speak, but then closed again. Her heartbeat was steady, but her breath wasn't. The lie wasn't just casual, it was seamless, practiced. This wasn't an accident, it was policy. Her presence, her clothes, her skin, none of it had fit his definition of a real buyer. Nearby, the young salesman, Daniel, watched too. His jaw clenched, and for a moment, his eyes met hers. He knew. He'd seen it happen. That flicker of shared recognition was both validating and heartbreaking. The realization washed over her, not like a crashing wave, but like cold water seeping into the seams of her coat. Slow, inevitable. She had been judged the moment she walked in. Every word since then had been performance. His, not hers. Nia stepped closer to the platform now, her voice low but clear. "Excuse me, I was told this vehicle wasn't available." Cole turned, expression unreadable for a beat, then flashed the kind of smile used to diffuse complaints without resolving them. "Apologies, ma'am. This couple had an earlier reservation. Perhaps you can come back." She cut him off, not with volume, but with steadiness. "I'm prepared to make a purchase today. Full price. No financing." A few heads turned. The Callahans glanced at each other, suddenly uneasy. Daniel took a cautious step forward, but stopped himself. Cole's jaw twitched, his professional polish thinning. "Ma'am," he said, voice tightening, "we cater to serious clients with a clear understanding of our process. This isn't a browsing showroom." There it was, the full sentence wrapped in faux civility, but dripping in insult. And now Nia understood. This wasn't about schedules. It wasn't about availability. It wasn't about money. It was about her not fitting the picture. And just like that, the realization wasn't slow anymore. It was sudden, sharp, and inescapable. The glass doors of Monarch Prestige Motors whooshed open again with a breath of crisp morning air. And time for just a heartbeat seemed to stall. The low, velvety growl of an approaching engine filled the space like a distant warning. Conversations froze mid-sentence. Heads turned. Even Cole, halfway through pitching the Callahans on a custom leather upgrade, lost his rhythm. Outside, sleek and surreal against the steel gray sky, a custom Rolls-Royce Cullinan pulled to the curb. Matte obsidian paint shimmered with subtle blue undertones, the body gliding as if the pavement parted in reverence. A uniformed chauffeur stepped out, white gloves adjusting his collar with military precision. Without a word, he circled the vehicle and opened the rear door. The moment stretched, and then he emerged. Jordan Carter stepped onto the dealership pavement like a storm-given form. Tall, commanding, dressed in a midnight suit so sharply tailored it cut through tension like glass. Silver brushed his temples, and his eyes, dark, focused, unreadable, swept across the stunned faces inside. His every movement spoke quiet power, the kind that didn't need noise to take control. Cole moved instinctively, smoothing his blazer, forcing his most polished smile. "Welcome, sir. You've come to the right place. I'd be more than happy to—" "I know," Jordan said, voice cool, deep, final. The words landed like the snap of a lock. "I'm here about the Rain series," he continued, eyes locking on Cole. "My wife expressed interest yesterday." A ripple of realization stirred beneath the surface. Cole's smile faltered, but he pushed forward, clinging to his script. "Of course, if she left her name, I'm sure we can—" "Nia Carter," Jordan interrupted. Calm, clear, devastating. "The woman you dismissed, the one you told to check the pre-owned lot. Ring any bells?" Silence detonated across the room. Daniel stiffened. The receptionist dropped her pen. Even the Callahans backed away, their expressions contorting from curiosity to horror. The Cullinan idled behind Jordan like a sleeping dragon. Cole swallowed. "Sir, there must be some mistake. We welcome everyone here." "You lied to her," Jordan cut in, each word scalpel sharp. "Told her the car was reserved, then opened it for other clients. You looked at her clothes and made a call." Color drained from Cole's face. Richard Denning, the dealership owner, emerged from his office, drawn by the tension radiating like heat. "Mr. Carter, welcome," he began. Jordan turned his gaze on him next. "Let me make this clear. We didn't come to start a scene. We came to highlight one that's been playing every day, right here, on this floor." He looked back at Cole, who stood frozen in his finely pressed suit, now feeling like a costume. "My wife is the heart of a foundation that's changed thousands of lives," Jordan said. "You didn't just disrespect a woman, you disrespected a force you didn't bother to see." The room held its breath, and Nia stepped through the open door behind him, hood down, gaze steady. This time, no one looked away. 1 month later, the towering chandeliers of the Carolina Grand Hotel bathed the ballroom in soft gold. Strings of fairy lights shimmered across white draped tables, each centerpiece a nod to childhood resilience. Tiny shoes, sports medals, framed photos of smiling kids in wheelchairs. This was the Carter Wellness Gala, and every inch of the space pulsed with purpose. Volunteers moved through the crowd with practiced ease, guiding guests, passing hors d'oeuvres, laughing with children. Near the front doors, wearing a dark polo and a name badge that read "Event Staff," stood a man almost no one recognized at first glance, Cole Whitaker. Gone was the tailored arrogance, the slick smile. His posture was still upright, but now it came from intention, not ego. He adjusted the bow tie of a boy in a motorized chair. Jaden, 8 years old and fiercely opinionated about adaptive basketball. Jaden grinned up at him. "You tied it wrong again, Mr. Cole." Cole laughed, not defensively but genuinely. "You keep saying that, and yet here we are." He spotted Nia across the ballroom, elegant in a navy satin gown, her curls pinned back, eyes sweeping the crowd with warmth and purpose. She was magnetic, but not in the way that demanded attention. She earned it, quietly, steadily. He approached cautiously. "Dr. Carter," he began. She turned, her expression unreadable. "Mr. Whitaker, I know I've said it formally, in writing, through your foundation, but I needed to say it here." He paused. "I'm sorry for the way I treated you, not just for the assumptions I made, but the way I made you feel invisible. That was never acceptable." Her gaze held his for a long moment. Then with a small nod, she replied, "Acknowledgement matters, but growth matters more." She tilted her head toward Jaden, who was now teasing another volunteer. "He tells me you've become his unofficial rebound coach." Cole smiled. "Apparently, I shoot like I'm allergic to the net." Nia let out a quiet laugh, but her eyes softened. "This isn't easy work," she said. "You'll get it wrong sometimes, but showing up anyway, that's the start of something better." Across the room, Jordan joined them, arms slipping gently around his wife's waist. His gaze on Cole was cool but not closed. "I hear you've been involved in retraining the staff at Monarch." "Yes, sir," Cole said. "Started a mentorship program, working with Daniel. No more qualifying customers by their wardrobe." He hesitated. "The culture's changing, slowly, but it's changing." Jordan nodded, expression unreadable, then extended a hand. "We'll see if it holds." Cole took it, humbled. As the night continued, laughter echoed, music swelled, and across the ballroom, children who once faced daily barriers now danced, wheeled, and twirled under the chandeliers. Cole stood by the refreshment table, refilling lemonade for Jaden, watching the Carter couple move among the crowd, not flaunting wealth, but amplifying hope. For the first time in a long while, he didn't feel like he was selling anything. He felt like he was contributing. The last shot of the night was the one no one expected to go viral. A photographer hired to capture the Carter Wellness Gala had aimed his lens toward the dance floor, just as Jaden spun his wheelchair in a perfect 360. Laughter lighting up his face. Standing behind him in a simple black event shirt and rolled-up sleeves was Cole Whitaker, clapping and laughing harder than anyone. In the foreground stood Nia Carter and Jordan Carter, arm in arm, smiling, not with grandeur, but with quiet fulfillment. That one frame, one moment of joy, redemption, and unity hit the internet like a thunderclap. By morning, it was everywhere. From disrespect to redemption, a salesman's second chance. The billionaire couple who taught a lesson without saying a word. People couldn't stop talking about it. Comment sections overflowed with stories of being misjudged, overlooked, dismissed. Some shared their own quiet victories. Others admitted to having been a Cole once and promised to do better. Monarch Prestige Motors issued a public statement highlighting their internal reforms. Daniel, the young salesman, was promoted to customer experience lead. And yes, the Carter Foundation's funding goal for the new adaptive sports center exceeded by 300%. But what lingered most wasn't the money, it was the shift. At a press conference a week later, Nia was asked if she felt vindicated. She paused, thoughtful, then answered, "This was never about revenge, it was about recognition. Because sometimes the worst kind of discrimination isn't loud, it's quiet. It's a door never opened, a hand never offered. And changing that starts with one moment, one choice to see someone fully. She turned to Jaden, who flashed a thumbs up from his seat beside her. The real victories, they don't happen on showroom floors. They happen right here, where dignity is restored and humanity is honored. The audience stood in applause, but the real applause came days later, when Cole returned to the foundation. Not as a volunteer completing hours, but as a mentor in the foundation's career re-entry program, helping at-risk youth learn professional communication and emotional intelligence. He wasn't forgiven overnight. He didn't expect to be. But he showed up again and again, rebuilding what he had once torn down. And that, in the quiet corners of transformation, was enough. And for those still asking, what's the lesson? It's this. True character is revealed not by how you treat those you admire, but by how you treat those you underestimate. Respect isn't earned by appearance, status, or speech. It's given first by choice. And if you wait for someone to prove their worth before offering them dignity, you've already failed the test. So next time someone walks into the room looking out of place, ask yourself, or are you just looking from the wrong place? If this story moved you, if it made you think twice, or reminded you of your own moment of being seen or ignored, then don't let it stop here. Hit that like button. Subscribe to the X Daily Stories channel. Your front row seat to powerful, cinematic stories that challenge assumptions, stir the heart, and leave a mark long after the screen fades to black. We're dropping new episodes every day. Real drama, real people, and real lessons worth sharing. Turn on notifications, leave us a comment, and join a growing community that believes stories aren't just for entertainment, they're for change. See you in the next one.